We will move on now to item 23.27, this safeguarding report. Can I invite Karen Galloway to present that report?
Good morning, Synod. Thank you very much for including safeguarding on your agenda today. I was just reflecting that the last time I spoke to Synod was in October 2019, when I'd been in post less than 3 months. So it's several years on, and little did I know when I stood in front of everybody 4 years ago that the world of safeguarding would have moved on so much in such a short time. I really want to start and follow, as it's been happening this morning, with thank yous. The safeguarding team couldn't function and do a fraction of the work that they do without the support of clergy and laity, and particularly the parish safeguarding officers. I know they work really hard in parishes. It's sometimes quite a thankless task, but they do their best to make the church a safer place for all. And I would be very remiss if I didn't mention the many people out there who ring me and ask for advice and want to make their parish the best they can in terms of safeguarding. So I've spoken in my report about what the role of the diocesan team is, but I haven't really mentioned too much about the purpose. And the purpose is about making sure that places of worship are safe places. Now that might seem a bit strange because you think, well, we're all Christian, we're all God-loving, of course it's a safe place. But unfortunately, as in many organisations, there are people who like to take advantage of that and who don't actually treat each other as well as we think that they should do. And that's where safeguarding comes in. And I'm not talking about the high-profile sex offender cases that the papers and the media and social media love to report on. I'm talking about the things that happen between individuals in parishes, in villages, in congregations. As you know, most of my work is not around the high profile type cases. It's conversations with people who are concerned about their neighbours, who feel that their neighbours are being abused or being put upon by people who are taking advantage of them. This week, I've had 2 cases around domestic abuse. I met somebody yesterday who was just so thankful that myself and a member of clergy had taken some time to have a chat with them. So it's not about everybody being, you know, the Jimmy Saviles or is it Russell Brand, the latest one, people in the church. It's about things that are happening in your parish on a day-to-day basis. My work comes from all areas. Sometimes it's from the police, sometimes it's local authority, but most of the time it's conversations I'm having with members of clergy, with members of parishes who are just picking up the phone. And what I want to emphasise is that if you are concerned about something, please just speak to me. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. It was completely anonymous. I'm quite happy to do that. If I felt that somebody was at immediate risk, then I would obviously want to escalate that. But I'm quite happy to just have a chat, because sometimes people think if something's not right, then there tends to be something that doesn't quite fit. It might not be safeguarding, but I might be in a position, or a member of the team might be in a position to signpost you to somewhere where you can have a bit more reassurance, or the individual that you're concerned about can get some support. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the team. So when we met in Synod in October 2019, there was myself, a part-time trainer, and a lot of you will have had contact with Sally Fitch, who was our administrator. Sally decided to retire earlier in the year, and for those of you who know her, she was a very private person, and she made it very clear to me, and I wouldn't be one to go against Sally's wishes, that she didn't want a lot of fuss and she just wanted to retire quietly, and that when opportunities arose, I could tell people that she'd retired. Unfortunately, we were 7 months without a replacement for Sally, and could anybody really replace Sally? For those of you who'd worked with her, you would understand. But we were fortunate in July for Alison Balen to be appointed. So any of your queries around DBSs and training, if you contact Alison, she will do her best to help you and point you in the right direction of what needs to happen. Other members of the team, we have Catherine Banthorpe, who's been with us just over a year, who is the Assistant Diocesan Safeguarding Officer. We also have two trainers, Reverend Mark B and Lisa Hicks, who work part-time. Basically, they have a job share. So you will find them around the diocese, either training together by Zoom or in person, or doing individual roles. And I will talk a little bit about training in a couple of minutes. The other thing I just want to raise is we have a Diocesan Safeguarding Advisory Panel. And until fairly recently, Simon Ash was the independent chair. He was with us, I think, for about 9 years when he decided that it was time that, due to other commitments, he couldn't give his time to that role. So for the last few months, and I'm happy to announce that for the next year, we're working on a consultation basis with Angelina Crook. Now, Angelina knows the diocese from having, and I've checked this out with the national team, having been one of our independent reviewers. So she's never worked for us, but she's had a lot of understanding as to what's happening with safeguarding in this particular diocese. And she will be working with myself and the team and the diocese going forward to implement some of the new things that are coming out of the national church. The national church really is growing enormously in terms of the national safeguarding team. And from that, we have various updated policies that we'll be implementing over the next sort of year or so. Amongst that, I have made reference to a new set of national standards that have been brought in. Now, in my report, I make reference to them coming in September. As often happens within the church, these have been postponed a little bit and actually should now be in place from next week. We don't have full details yet as to what these will look like. I've seen the draft copies, but from next week onwards, I should be able to get a copy of the final standards. And in October 2025, and that's not a typo, it is October 2025, there will be an external audit of this diocese as well as all the other 42 dioceses, and they will be against the national standards. So one of the tasks that Angelina and I will be doing will be to look at those standards and how we can work them alongside the work that we're doing within the diocese. One of the main areas really to talk about is training. I know people want to run for the hills whenever we mention safeguarding training, and people say, why do I need to do it? Because I do it for the Scouts or I do it for my organisation. The reason we ask is because there are some specifics within the church around spiritual abuse, and some of the structures are different within the church than you would find in other organisations. We know that, again, people, may not be computer savvy or not want to sit there on their own and look at some of these subjects, which can be quite distressing. So we are delivering some face-to-face training. But again, a huge thank you, because we have a group of people who are going through recruitment to be volunteer trainers. And one of the things that they can offer is the local input, the local knowledge. And we have several people who will just sit alongside someone and help them through the pushing of the buttons to get them through the basic awareness and foundation course. We've had other people who have had a little group of people in their home over tea and coffee and have put the training on their TV screen and worked through an afternoon of just talking about safeguarding. So training doesn't have to be hard and serious and frightening for people. We want to make it as accessible as possible for everyone out there. So if you have people who are reluctant or concerned, then please contact the team, because there may be a way that we can work around and help them through, some very difficult topics. One of the main kickbacks I've had, or pushbacks I've had, is around the domestic abuse awareness training. And doing that online is difficult. It's quite a hard-hitting course. I've done it a couple of times myself, and even though I've worked in that field for a while, there are some things in there that do strike home. So the national team has agreed that we can start to deliver this in person. And Lisa and Mark delivered an event over in Bury, and I delivered an event over in Bungay with Mark just last week as pilots to run this, and they seem to be received quite well. There's a couple of tweaks on the technology that we need to do, but the plan is that in 2024 we will be rolling out more face-to-face domestic abuse awareness groups to give people that opportunity to talk to others and to meet members of the team, so that there is something of concern that can be dealt with as immediately as possible, really. My one complaint, and there's always has to be one in safeguarding, is that we have advertised events, people have signed up, and the trainers have attended, and we've been down to 2 people. So it's not good use of resources. I'm not saying that to train 2 people is not important, because we do, and we would go ahead and do that. But when you're expecting 9, 10 plus people and you're down to 2 or 3, then it isn't a good use of our resources. So what I would say is, and I know there are times when people, suddenly they're ill or they have a family emergency, life does get in the way. We accept that. But if you could let us know in advance, then it helps us to maybe change things around or offer those places to other people who we know are waiting for the training. So that's my little plea, is if you could take that back to your parishes and say, if you can't do the training, can you let them know? We're not going to shout, but it just helps us to manage things, really. And we are looking at behind the scenes, working with Paul Sparrow, who is the data analysis in the office, to try and pull together some records so that we can start reminding people on a regular basis when their training is required. At the moment, we don't have a specific training database, but we're trying to put together spreadsheets and processes where we can do that. The only other thing that I would mention are risk assessments. We work with a national safeguarding team around risk assessments, particularly for people who are coming out of prison, having been convicted of certain types of offences, who wish to worship in our parishes. We don't wish to exclude people, but we do need to make sure that they are able to worship safely, and also that people around them are in a safe position. So I will work with any parish, parish safeguarding officers, member of clergy, member of laity, to pull together a risk assessment and an agreement. Now, in the past, until recently, these were called worship agreements. They're now called church safety plans, and I think they make a lot more sense and make much easier reading and for better implementation. So if any parish or church, that you've got somebody who you think may have just come out of prison, then please contact me, because I can speak to the local public protection unit and we can put things in place. And again, it's just a big thank you to clergy members. I've seen various names on the screen today, and just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing and support, because going forward we wouldn't be able to do this, but there's still a way to go. And our aim is to try and change the culture of the church from safeguarding being something people are afraid of to something that they embrace and make sure that it's embedded in their church. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, or we've time for that. Don't think I've run over yet.
No, thank you very much, Karen, for all the work that you do. Has anyone got any questions? Yes, we have David Lamming. Could you say which deanery you are representing?
Thank you, Sharon. David Lamming, Sudbury Deanery. I think it should be on the screen as well. Karen, thank you for your report and for the elaboration you've just given us in your address. I just wonder whether you would like to make any comment about the position regarding safeguarding at national level, which was very much a focus of the recent General Synod in York. Somewhat an unhappy experience, I think, for those who were there on the Sunday afternoon, but in particular, would you like to comment on what role you have or we have as a diocese in inputting into the two inquiries that have been set up following the York Synod, one by a barrister Sarah Wilkinson into the way in which the Independent Safeguarding Board was set up and has now come to be closed, and perhaps more importantly, the investigation by Professor Alexis Jay, who of course chaired the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, into producing for the church a proposal for future supervision, scrutiny, etc., independent scrutiny of safeguarding, and how that would work in your view, with your role and the role of safeguarding within the diocese.
Okay, I haven't had too much input into that. I'm aware that a letter has been sent from people in my role, diocesan safeguarding officers. The reason I use the phrase people in my role, because if you go to various different dioceses, we've all got a slightly different title. We're all doing the same work, but we've all got a slightly different title, and that's one of the things that's been looked into. It's about changing our legal status under canon law to be diocesan safeguarding officers. A letter has gone in to really just support some of the work that we do in our role. I have seen a draft job description, which I personally don't have any problem with, because it's really alongside the one that I'm doing now, and it's what I would expect to happen for someone in a role in a diocese who was leading safeguarding. In terms of I'm from a personal perspective, I already have external supervision. So I have my new permanent boss, Gary, who works with me in terms of what's happening within the diocesan structure and the strategy for the diocese and safeguarding and how it fits in with the other teams. But for my what's called clinical supervision, which is about the cases, I have an external supervisor who is one of Suffolk County Council's safeguarding managers. She's one of the county managers. So I already have that external scrutiny. I know that there have been 3 pilots schemes running where they're looking at DSOs being supervised by an external person from the national team, from a national perspective, to bring together a more coherent approach through the diocese. I personally don't have too much a problem with that. I think scrutiny is important. I think there should be external scrutiny. I don't think we should be marking our own homework. But my only concern is that if we become too distant from dioceses or too distant from parishes, I think our role will completely change, and that personal impact, and we just become another statutory agency, really. So why would we need us? Why not just use the statutory agency, I suppose is what I'm saying. At least when we work and we're embedded in the diocese, we have an understanding of some of the local issues around there. But in terms of my day-to-day job at the moment, I carry on as usual, because it's not impacting on me as an individual in terms of the work that I can do. I think I wasn't involved in anything to do with the decisions around the Archbishop's Council. I know that the people that were, it was a very painful decision, and that some people received several phone calls and things afterwards, which were quite upsetting. But it's a very sensitive area, safeguarding, and people will respond in different ways. So my view is that I will look and I will listen and I will implement as required.
Thank you very much, Karen. Can I remind members that this is about taking note of the safeguarding report that Karen has presented. So any other questions on the report? No, if not, then can we move